Afrobeats is often seen as a uniquely Nigerian success story. But what if we're looking at it the wrong way? In the early 2010s, African music was experiencing a transformative movement. Angola was riding high with the continental success of Cabo Snoop. Togo had found the superstars it craved in the duo Tufan. Ghana's Azonto was making waves with its infectious rhythms and viral dance moves, while Nigeria was beginning its ascent to global recognition. Let's start with this question. What if the rise of Afrobeats wasn't just about Nigeria, but also about the groundwork laid by these other movements, but particularly Ghana's Azonto movement? I'm going to break this down in epic fashion, so buckle up. This is the no BS version. Azonto began as a grassroots movement in Ghana's coastal communities, and the dance became a cultural phenomenon, spreading like wildfire across schools, clubs, and even football stadiums. It is documented that the Azonto name first surfaced in urban media as far back as 2009 when R2Bs released the track Azonto from their album The Revolution. It is said that around 2010, Ghana introduced a new wave of music and dance that would then take the world by storm. But it wasn't until Sarkodie's You Go Kill Me in 2012 that Azonto truly exploded. It is also documented that senior high school students in Ghana led the charge, flooding social media with dance videos that amplified the craze. Artists like EL, Guru, and Stage A all released tracks that fueled Azonto's dominance. I remember EL's Obumo, and then groups like 5-5 with the song Bosukena and more. Azonto wasn't just a genre, it was a movement that became a viral phenomenon across Africa and the diaspora. And for many, Azonto was the moment African music truly entered the digital age. Its dance challenges took over YouTube, and it became a unifying symbol for Africans in the diaspora. Azonto wasn't just music or dance, it was innovative, playful, and distinctly Ghanaian, leveraging its strong UK diaspora to gain traction. At its peak, Azonto was a cultural force, dominating clubs, schools, and social media platforms, and social gatherings as well. If you know what's good for you, head over to mjwemoto.com, which is mjwemoto.com. There's merch and goodies for everybody. mjwemoto.com. But while Azonto was taking over the African diaspora, Nigeria had already crafted its own major success story. I want you to remember this because it is a significant marker. The term Afrobeats also hadn't quite stuck as Nigeria's dear baby at that time. Hell, the name wasn't even as used as much as it is now. If you browse many publications, they refer to youthful Nigerian music, especially in the early 2000s, going into the early 2010s, as Nigerian hip-hop. Both local Nigerian publications and international ones. This was also the case with online stores that sold MP3s. I've talked about this in other videos, so I won't go into detail again. You can browse the channel and check that out. Anyway, something amazing actually happened that would change Nigerian music forever. If we keep it a buck, it changed African music forever too. That was D'banj's Oliver Twist. D'banj's Oliver Twist marked a turning point, becoming one of the first modern African tracks, especially from a youthful sort of guy or artist, whatever you want to call it, to gain significant global recognition. It had everything: a unique production, that D'banj charisma, and a certain magnetism which the world loved. Here's where it gets interesting. It happened the same year Azonto got its breakout hit by Sarkodie, You Go Kill Me. This fueled the Ghana versus Nigeria debates even more, as two countries that have been in competition for the longest time, particularly on the football pitch. Oliver Twist showed that African artists could play on the world stage. It was the first time many mainstream listeners out there were exposed to the energy and creativity of African music. The 2012 hit charted on the UK singles chart, also proving that African music could transcend the diaspora and reach a wider audience. Azonto did something unique as well. It tapped into a largely musically starved and growing African diaspora in the UK, with Ghanaians themselves leading the way, and Nigerians, Zimbabweans, Kenyans, Sweet Salonians, Cameroonians, etc. in support. And it also wowed other communities like Jamaicans and Caribbeans that are also in the UK. We hadn't experienced a dance movement quite as gripping, and it was also a look into Ghana's music industry like we hadn't actually seen it before. But there's a key reason the UK was the perfect breeding ground for Azonto's international success to begin with. The UK was just coming out of the UK funky era, which had a lot of dance songs that had similar tempos, similar patterns to African dance songs, and even more so Ghanaian Azonto songs, which is quite interesting. It was also quite dance driven, even if the dances were simpler like head, shoulders, knees and toes. I'm pretty sure anybody in the UK remembers that song from like 2009, 2010. This bit is easy to overlook, but the two genres were in the same family in many ways. So it was an easy transition from UK funky to Azonto. While D'banj was doing a crossover act into a more global audience, Azonto had captured the hearts of the African diaspora, especially with the high energy dance challenges and the prominence of YouTube just coming as this video platform. On the other hand, Nigeria at the same time had started breaking out more unique stars and songs of its own, with the diaspora ear embracing them. These songs include Davido's Damiduro, Cass's Femile, Burna Boy's Like to Party, and names like Tiwa Savage, who had dropped Kele Kele Love late 2010 and It Totally Owned 2011. This is the period when the term Afrobeats really started being associated with primarily Nigerian music. It was an us versus them scenario. On one side, Ghana had invented Azonto and there was no denying it, and on the other, Nigeria took its chance to wrestle the term Afrobeats away from anyone else, especially Ghana, that had identified with it in the early days as an encapsulation of predominantly West African music exported to the UK by the various DJs that were feeding the diaspora African communities there. That story for another day though. What then happened is the most important piece to the outcome of this story, and the most significant piece to answering the question, did Azonto make way for Afrobeats to succeed? Look, we cannot answer this question without categorically stating that this period between 2010 and 2014 wasn't just about music. It was also about identity. Azonto's dominance gave Nigeria the perfect distraction to consolidate its claim to the term Afrobeats. Fan rivalries between Ghanaians and Nigerians added fuel to the fire, of course, with each side staking their claim in defining the African music narrative. Azonto's major success in the UK, other countries in Europe as well, and parts of the US, demonstrated that African music could be marketed in its authenticity, in its authentic form, to diaspora Africans without needing to package it differently. At the same time, D'banj's Oliver Twist majorly, and other songs, other Nigerian songs at the time, like Iyanya's Kukere, which was huge, Chidike's Gaga Crazy, a local club favorite in Niger as a dance hit, Ice Prince's Aboki, Davido's Damiduro, Maydi's Ile Ijo, which actually had some Azonto dances in its music video, but this was actually common with a number of Nigerian songs at the time as well. Take P Square's Alingo, which had some Azonto choreography within the music video. It was beautiful to see because you could tell how artists from the two countries inspired one another as they did things uniquely and differently. If you dig even deeper, This era was actually a dance era for African music as it was being exported overseas. In Davido's Mammoth Skelewu music video, you can even see the popular Bordel dance from Zimbabwe within the choreography. Look at Yemi Alade's Journey, which had some dance inspiration from the Ndombolo side of DRC. These artists were finding ways to showcase what Africa was about in every aspect of their music. So really, what these songs did is they proved that African music could transcend cultural and geographic boundaries and appeal to the African diaspora and non-African cultures, especially when they fused popular genres that were recognizable to the ears of these other cultures. Two different approaches and two different formulas for success. While Azonto stayed dance-focused and didn't really evolve across a span of 2 to 3 years in the limelight, Afrobeats offered something unseen under the wider African music umbrella. A more adaptable sound that retained enough local elements to not be seen as just a copy of something else from out there. In the process, making it easier to integrate into global music trends. Afrobeats was itself based on numerous fusions, but the right ones in the right doses. If we take a look, Azonto was incredibly dance-centric and in many ways focused on one primary dance and remained deeply tied to Ghanaian identity. Its appeal was undeniable, but it didn't evolve into a broader, more versatile genre. This is where Afrobeats took advantage of Azonto's weaknesses. While Azonto prepared the African diaspora audiences to embrace a new wave of African music, Afrobeats took the baton and ran with it. Its adaptability, diverse influences, and ability to produce global stars like Wizkid, Yemi Alade, Burna Boy, etc. helped it become Africa's defining sound globally. With this, we see that these movements weren't isolated. They fed into each other in some way. Dibanje's success created global curiosity about modern African sounds. Many Africans in the diaspora hadn't heard a song from their neck of the woods by a young, cool artist being played on commercial radio, in high-end retail stores, etc. It was a wow moment. It brought African music into conversations it would otherwise have never been a part of. And diaspora Africans felt seen because of Dibanje's Oliver Twist. Azonto, on the other hand, gave Ghanaians and other diaspora Africans something they could uniquely latch onto as their own thing. A celebration of what being African actually felt like, but this time with YouTube capturing dances and stories in a unique way. When the wider Afrobeats movement started gaining traction as part of a rise in the African diaspora interest among other factors, it already had a primed audience ready to embrace it. Those audiences had been primed by Dibanje's Oliver Twist and the Azonto movement together. While Azonto opened African diaspora doors, it didn't fully step through them. Its dance-centric nature and lack of institutional support in Ghana meant it couldn't evolve into a sustainable genre. Ghanaian Azonto musicians faced disunity from their own people, wild I tell you, but not surprising because it happens across many countries in Africa as well. But in the Ghanaian example, religious institutions said Azonto was the devil's music and more. There were even calls to ban it. To ban Azonto from from radio and all that stuff. And this left space for Afrobeats to thrive as Africa's defining sound, because Ghanaians themselves couldn't even agree on whether Azonto was good for them or not or whatever. by 2015, we're getting the what happened to Azonto articles all over, whether it was in Ghana itself or it was in the UK. We're getting a lot of that. And what that meant was Azonto was done and dusted. Even some of the biggest acts to have done Azonto songs had moved to something else. EL was doing other types of music. Sarkodie himself, who had arguably the biggest Azonto hit of all time, well, he was doing Adonai in 2014. He had moved from that whole Azonto thing. It's no surprise that Azonto, as much as it is a niche genre now with, few followers here and there, nobody talks about Azonto like that anymore. However, let's take it back to 2014, because 2014 is one of the best Afrobeats years you are ever gonna find. But it's also the year that totally killed Azonto, and maybe the Ghana versus Nigeria debate. At this point is where we find the song that then opened the floodgates for Afrobeats as we know it now, defined it as a new era with Nigerians in charge, and ultimately killing Azonto in the process. And that song is Wizkid's Ojuelegba. This song, basically from a cultural perspective, did more for Nigerian music and Afrobeats than numbers can ever tell. But I'll leave that story for another day. So, based on the facts, do you think Azonto made way for Afrobeats to succeed or what? Let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, that's it from me. My name is MJ Wemoto, son of Zimbabwe, signing out. Peace. Day.